The dusty wind blew across the prairie, carrying whispers of loneliness and secrets that townsfolk tried to bury under their Sunday smiles. The sun set low, painting the sky in fiery streaks of red as though God himself had spilled blood across the horizon. It was in that dying light that a shy teacher, Miss Eliza Carrington, closed up the one-room schoolhouse and stepped into the silence that had become her constant companion. She thought no one watched her, but eyes did. Always. The town said Miss Carrington had a gentleness that could soften stone. A quiet woman, fragile as porcelain, she carried her books close to her chest as if they were armor. She didn't raise her voice, not even to rowdy boys who tried her patience. Instead, she had another gift. Her hands moved like poetry in the air, weaving signs and gestures that spoke louder than thunder. Few understood why she knew such a language, fewer cared, but it mattered deeply to one small soul. Little Annie Dalton, the daughter of the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties, sat in the front of Miss Carrington's class every morning. The child was silent, not because she chose to be but because she had been born without voice. The other children teased, whispered, giggled behind their hands, but Miss Carrington silenced them with a look that pierced deeper than scolding ever could. When the others weren't watching, Eliza bent down and greeted Annie with braceful hands. "Good morning, dear heart. You are safe here." The little girl's eyes lit like lanterns in the dark. No one knew Annie's father, Jacob Dalton, stood in the shadows that evening. No one knew his rough rancher's heart, hardened by cattle drives, whiskey nights, and land disputes fought with bullets, stopped for a moment when he saw the schoolteacher's fingers dance for his daughter. He had come only to collect Annie, but what he collected instead was a feeling he had not tasted in years. And it terrified him more than any outlaw ever had. The townsfolk whispered that Jacob Dalton was a man untouchable, a baron of the plains. His herds numbered in the thousands, his men rode like soldiers, his land stretched farther than most maps dared draw. Widowed years ago, he raised Annie with iron protection. Folks claimed his heart was locked in a vault, never again to be touched by a woman's hand. But that night, watching Miss Carrington bend low, smile soft, and let Annie's little fingers reply with trembling joy, Jacob felt the vault tremble. Eliza didn't notice him at first. She walked Annie out into the yard, signing as she spoke aloud softly, "Your papa is waiting, sweet girl. You did so well today." Annie clung to her skirt, reluctant to leave. That's when Jacob stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel, the brim of his black hat hiding his storm-gray eyes. "Miss Carrington," he said, voice low and rough like rolling thunder. Eliza startled, straightened, and gave a nervous nod. "Mr. Dalton." He reached for Annie, who went willingly but not happily, her eyes darting back to the teacher. Jacob's gaze followed his daughter's and lingered longer than it should have. "You know her language." Eliza folded her hands, modest eyes lowering. "Yes, sir. I was taught when I was younger. A family need." She didn't explain further. Secrets clung to her like the dust on her dress. Jacob studied her in silence, then turned, lifting Annie into the saddle before him. He didn't say another word, but as he rode away, something gnawed at him, something dangerous. The next weeks blurred into a strange dance neither meant to enter. Every morning, Annie ran to the schoolhouse with newfound eagerness. Every evening, Jacob found excuses to linger, arriving too early or staying too long. He asked questions about Annie's progress, about her learning, about how sign language worked. But beneath each question lay another he didn't dare speak. "Who are you, Miss Carrington, and why does my heart stumble when you smile?" Eliza felt the weight of his presence each day. She wasn't blind to his gaze, nor to the way her own pulse betrayed her. But she fought it. She had come to this frontier town to disappear, to bury her past like a coffin nailed shut. The teacher's desk was safer than the world she had fled. She told herself Jacob Dalton's heart was stone, his life untouchable. And yet, when Annie's tiny hands signed "Love" in her direction, and Jacob's breath caught faintly, Eliza knew the walls she had built were beginning to crack. But love in the West was never simple. It always carried shadows. One night, when the town lay under a cold silver moon, gunfire cracked in the distance. Jacob Dalton's ranch was under threat. Rustlers, bold and desperate, had come for his cattle. Jacob rode out with his men, rifles blazing, the sky alight with flames from burning hay. Eliza, awake in her small rented room, clutched her shawl as the sounds of violence echoed. She thought of Annie, alone and afraid, and without thinking, she ran through the night. She found the girl shivering outside the bunkhouse, tears on her cheeks. Eliza dropped to her knees, signing with frantic hands, "You are safe." "I'm here. Don't be afraid." She wrapped Annie in her arms, shielding her as though her frail body could stop bullets. Jacob saw them when the fight was over, smoke rising behind him, his men chasing down stragglers. His daughter asleep in the teacher's arms, her small fingers curled in trust. Eliza's face pale but resolute. Something inside him shifted like earth before an avalanche. He dismounted, standing before her in the glow of dying flames. "Why are you here?" His voice shook, though not from anger. Eliza looked up, eyes wide and wet. "Because she needed me." That answer struck harder than any bullet. Jacob knelt, his calloused hand brushing Annie's hair. For the first time in years, the iron mask he wore slipped. He whispered, "And I need you." Her breath caught, the night holding them in silence. But even as her heart pulled toward him, terror clawed from her past. Eliza had not come to this town by chance. She had come to hide from a man in St. Louis whose power rivaled Jacob's, whose cruelty had scarred her spirit. A man who once claimed her and swore no one else ever would. She carried that secret like a dagger at her back, always fearing it would cut through the life she was trying to build. And now, Jacob's presence, his interest, threatened to tear her safety apart. The following days only deepened the storm between them. Jacob grew bolder, though still a man of few words. His hands lingered when he handed Annie's books back to Eliza. His eyes softened when they met hers across the schoolroom. The town began to whisper, what business did a wealthy rancher have lingering around a shy schoolteacher? Some said he was bewitched. Others said it was shameful. But the most dangerous whispers came from farther away. Word traveled fast across the West, carried by riders, by wagons, by drunken tongues in saloons. And one evening, as Eliza walked home, a figure stepped from the shadows. A figure she prayed never to see again. "Found you, darlin'." His voice was silk over poison. "Mr. Carver, the man from St. Louis, richer than most kings, crueler than any outlaw. The man she once escaped by the narrow brace of night." Eliza froze, her heart a snared rabbit. "You." Carver's smile was wide and cold. "You thought you could hide in some dust-hole town. I told you, you're mine. No schoolhouse, no rancher, mine." Fear nearly dropped her to her knees, but another image burned brighter. Annie's small hands signing, "Love," Jacob's broken voice admitting need. She gathered every ounce of courage. "I will never be yours again." Carver's eyes narrowed. "We'll see." The days that followed were a noose tightening. Carver lingered in town, flashing money, winning men to his side. Jacob noticed Eliza's pale face, her trembling hands. He pressed her, demanded the truth. And finally, tears spilling, she told him everything. Jacob's fury was a storm. He rose from the chair like a man possessed, vowing that no one, no matter how rich, how powerful, would take her. He would protect her, even if it meant blood. The final confrontation came at dusk, outside the schoolhouse. Carver arrived with hired guns, sneering, ready to drag Eliza back into his shadow. Jacob stood waiting, rifle in hand, his men at his back. The town watched from windows, breathless, as two titans collided. "You think you can keep her from me?" Carver spat. Jacob's voice was low, deadly calm. "She's not yours, and if you try to take her, you'll find out just how far I'll go for what is mine." The guns spoke next, flashes of fire, screams tearing the air. When the smoke cleared, Carver lay broken in the dust, his men scattered or dead. Jacob stood bleeding but unyielding, his rifle still smoking. Eliza rushed to him, her hands trembling as she signed and spoke. Why risk everything?" Jacob gripped her shoulders, his eyes fierce and raw. "Because you were worth the risk the moment I saw you with my daughter. And I'm done living behind walls." The townsfolk never forgot the sight. Miss Carrington weeping into the chest of the richest rancher, Annie smiling between them, her little fingers signing, "Family." The West was never gentle. It was carved in blood and dust. But in that moment, amid the ashes of violence and the promise of dawn, something rare bloomed. Love, fragile yet unbreakable, between a shy teacher who had run from the past and a hardened rancher who never thought his heart would beat again. And as the prairie wind carried whispers once more, they were no longer whispers of secrets or fear. They were whispers of a new beginning.